All right, we're going to take a trip back in time, way back to 18th century Canada. But forget what you think you know about just soldiers and fur traders. We're about to uncover the stories of two very different and maybe surprising groups who helped build the nation from the ground up.
So, when you picture early Canada, who comes to mind? Probably French fur traders, maybe some British soldiers, right? And yeah, of course, they're a massive part of the story. But they are not the whole story. Not even close. We're going to add a couple of really crucial chapters to that picture.
We're going to focus on two very different communities, Jewish settlers and Mennonite settlers. They came to Canada with different beliefs, different skills, but they shared this one powerful goal, finding a place to call home, a place where they could be free. So let's start with what pushed them to leave everything they knew behind. So, why Canada? What makes someone pack up and cross an entire ocean to a place they've never seen? Well, for both of these groups, the story starts with a huge push away from Europe, a world that just wasn't safe for them anymore.
For Jewish settlers, it was really about escaping centuries of religious persecution. Back in Europe, state-run religions basically made their faith illegal, and even when they first got to Canada, it wasn't easy. Catholic New France had all these restrictions. It wasn't until the British took over in 1763 that the door finally truly opened for them to build a life.
Now, the Mennonite story is a little different, but it's also all about religious freedom. You see, as Anabaptists, one of their absolute core beliefs is pacifism, no violence, no war. This meant they refused to serve in the military, which, as you can imagine, put them in direct conflict with the authorities in Europe. They needed a place where they could live out their faith, no compromises. And this is exactly what Canada put on the table, a sanctuary. For both groups, it meant the freedom to worship however they chose. But for the Mennonites, there was a game changer. The British government didn't just offer land. They offered a legal exemption from military service. That was it. That was the safe haven they had been searching for.
Okay, so they made it. They arrived in this vast new land. But building a life from scratch, this is where their stories take two completely different turns. Their approaches show us two very different ways to survive and even thrive in a new world.
I mean, the contrast here is just striking, isn't it? Jewish settlers, they headed for the cities, places like Montreal. They jumped into commerce, into the colonial economy. The Mennonites, they went in the complete opposite direction. They headed for rural lands in southern Ontario, building these tight-knit farming communities centered on faith. Two peoples, two totally different blueprints for building a new life.
Let's dig into the Jewish settlers for a second. Many of them were already skilled merchants and entrepreneurs. They pretty quickly became key players in the fur trade and in retail, basically helping to build the economic engines of Canada's first cities. Their trading networks were absolutely vital for connecting these new towns and getting them the supplies they needed to grow.
And then you have the Mennonites, who brought a totally different skill set, farming. These folks were master agriculturalists, and they literally built their communities from the soil up. Their entire world revolved around sustainable farming and simple living, creating these self-sufficient towns that would become the backbone of Canada's farmland.
But let's be real. Just because Canada promised freedom, it didn't mean life was going to be easy. Not at all. Surviving in this new world came with its own set of brutal challenges, and each community had to face their own unique struggles to carve out a place for themselves.
For Jewish settlers, a lot of the biggest hurdles were social. They still faced religious discrimination, which meant being shut out of certain schools, jobs, and social circles. So what did they do? They had to build their own institutions, like synagogues, just to keep their culture alive and support each other, all while trying to survive the ridiculously harsh Canadian climate. The Mennonite struggles were different. Theirs were often about their relationship with the land and their own isolation. They had to figure out how to farm in Canada's brutal winters, which was no small task. And at the same time, their very distinct, simple way of life often led to a lot of misunderstandings with their neighbors, which made holding on to their traditions a constant battle. But here's the thing. Despite all those hardships, both communities made it. And they did more than just survive. They left a permanent mark on Canada. Their stories became these foundational threads in the fabric of a new, diverse country. The resilience of those first Jewish settlers created an incredible legacy. By holding on tight to their identity while also contributing to the economy, they established a permanent and really influential presence. They didn't just build lives for themselves. They basically forged a path that made it possible for future waves of Jewish immigrants to find a home here too.
And the Mennonite legacy, you can literally see it written on the land itself. Their dedication to agriculture and community values became a core part of Canada's rural identity. From the farm fields of Kitchener-Waterloo to the prairies, their impact on the country's farming heritage is just undeniable. And you know, this legacy isn't just something in a history book. It is alive and well. Today, there are over 200,000 Mennonites living in Canada. That's not a historical footnote. That's a thriving community that continues to be a huge part of what Canada is today.
When you look at it all, the stories of these Jewish and Mennonite settlers show us something really profound. A nation isn't just built by armies or politicians. It's built, quietly but with incredible determination, by communities just looking for a safe place to call home. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How do the stories of a few determined people end up shaping the identity of an entire nation? Thanks for joining us.